including the process of night and day. In describing the sequence of night and day, the Quran uses the Arabic verb kawara, which tells how the night winds or coils itself about the day and the day about the night, an image which fits perfectly with a cycle of night and day produced by the turning of the earth upon its axis. He makes the night enfold the day and the day enfold the night. Surat Az-Zumar, verse 5. It is he who created the night and day and the sun and moon, all the celestial bodies traveling in an orbit, each with its own motion. Surat Al-Anbiya, verse 33. Revelation goes much further than science in its unified vision of creation. Yet those aspects of it which specifically describe the material world agree with established scientific fact. Also, there is no observation in the Quran which is contradicted by scientific fact. There is no genuine quarrel between the religious search for wisdom and the scientific search for truth. It is dogmatism that creates this illusory schism. Religious dogmatism leads to the denial of much genuine scientific discovery. Scientific dogmatism often arises through an inability to distinguish between fact and theory. Nowhere does this become more apparent than in the controversy surrounding the theory of evolution. For most of us, the concept of evolution conjures up the name Charles Darwin.
Now, here's Charles Darwin, and we want to remember him because he's the first person to think of a convincing mechanism to explain how evolution might have occurred. He called this mechanism natural selection, and he described it in his book. Who remembers the name of his book?
He wrote a book called The Origin of Species.
Right. He sailed in the Pacific to a group of islands called the Galapagos on his ship. Does anyone remember? Yes? HMS Beagle, right.
On the Galapagos Islands, Darwin found living proof of an evolutionary process at work. He found, for instance, that there were considerable variations in the beaks of finches, each having evolved to exploit a different ecological niche. But the variations all occurred within the same species. Darwin was unable to find any evidence to support his theory that one species could evolve into another. He expressed his misgivings in a letter written to Thomas Thornton in 1861. But I believe in natural selection, not because I can prove in any single case that it has changed one species into another, but because it groups and explains well, as it seems to me, a host of facts in classification, embryology, morphology, rudimentary organs, geological succession and distribution.
Apes. Which one is an ape?
Despite his misgivings, Darwin's work had such a powerful impact that it has colored most scientific research on the subject since. The popular image of evolution, that mankind evolved from apes, has been so widely embraced that it is now taught as being fact rather than theory. More than a century of scientific research has failed to prove this theory. For a long time, the major line of research was paleontology, the study of fossils. Here, very limited and random evidence has fed an almost unlimited amount of speculation. In 1971, Professor Grasset, who held the chair of evolutionary studies at the Sorbonne University in Paris for 30 years, wrote, "In the history of the primates, we must be careful not to take at face value the reconstructions of our ancestors based on a few scanty vestiges that were put forward in all seriousness by highly imaginative paleontologists. This explains why genealogical trees of man are quickly devised and just as quickly discarded. The most recent works on the subject appear to be fairly mediocre, even though they concern new and interesting discoveries. The researchers engaged in these studies have neither the knowledge or the good sense to interpret the discoveries correctly." The fossil evidence has shown that there have been several stages in the development of mankind, but a link joining any of these hominid forms to another animal lineage has never been found. The famous Piltdown man hoax demonstrates the single-minded approach of paleontologists in seeking this speculative missing link.
Look, do you like it? If it was a bit bigger. Do you like her? Big eyebrows. Do you like her?
Right, look at Lucy and look at the others.
The oldest near-complete fossil of a hominid form is Lucy, who's thought to be nearly 3.5 million years old. The bone structure shows that Lucy walked upright on two legs like us, and not like an ape. Lucy and her kind, the Australopithecines, died out sometime during the first ice age. He created you in stages. Surat Nur, verse 14. Fossils found in Africa, Asia and Europe show that there was another wave of hominids, closer to our own size than Lucy, and with a brain capacity similar to modern man. This wave, Homo erectus, seems to have disappeared between 500,000 and 150,000 years ago. We created man according to the best organizational plan. Surat Atid, verse 4. The next wave, Neanderthal man, was even closer to us in structure, and probably in appearance. He died out between 100,000 to 40,000 years ago. If God wills, he destroys you, and in your place appoints who he wills as successors, just as he brought you forth from the descendants of other peoples. Surat An'am, verse 133. Neanderthal man was overlapped and succeeded by the fourth wave, Cro-Magnon man, who is the direct ancestor of modern man. No clear link has been found between any of these different stages. In truth, we created them and strengthened all of them, and when we willed, we replaced them completely by people who were of the same kind. Surat Al-Insan, verse 28. Once again, the overview of the Quran and the facts discovered by research seem to match. But here the similarity stops. The Quran does not agree with the theories and speculations of the paleontologists. The latest support for the theory of evolution of species comes through molecular biology, in particular from the study of chromosomes and the genetic code. In multicelled organisms, the complete genetic code is contained within the nucleus of each and every cell in the body. An individual inherits exact copies of genes from the parents, so passing on information from one generation to another. The only way a gene can change is through mutation during the duplication process. Geneticists have shown how this process of mutation can account for major physical changes within a short time span. But this is far from proving that one species can evolve into another, and it's even further from providing a complete explanation for the myriad life forms on this planet. For multi-celled organisms to change their nature and function, many different features have to evolve together. This needs fantastically complex genetic coordination. To attribute such coordination to random or chance mutation is a severe stretch of the imagination. Francis Crick, who's dominated the field of genetic research from the very beginning, acknowledges the severe limitations of the molecular approach. In one way, you could say all the genetic and molecular biological work of the last 60 years could be considered as a long interlude. Now that program has been completed, we have come full circle, back to the problems left behind unsolved. How does a wounded organism regenerate to exactly the same structure it had before? How does the egg form the organism? Almost nothing is known of the way genes communicate, cooperate, and organize themselves to develop a complex organism like man. An attempt to explain life solely in terms of random molecular mechanisms is too simplistic. It fails to deal with the fundamental questions behind the process of creation. We created you, and thereupon we fashioned you. Thereupon we told the angels, bow down to Adam. Surat al-Araf, verse 11. The spiritual concept behind the creation of man from clay or earth is well known. Science has shown how there is also a physical reality in this statement. The chemical components which form the human body are present to a greater or lesser quantity in the ground. God is the one who created you, then fashioned you harmoniously and in due proportion. Into whatever form he willed, he made you out of components. Surat al-Infitar, verses 7 and 8. The creation of mankind as a species can be seen in microcosm with the creation of each individual human being. The Quranic verses dealing with the fertilization and development of the human embryo are stunning in their clarity and precision. What you're seeing is the actual journey of the male sperm to the egg, photographed inside the body for the first time. God fashioned the two of a pair, the male and the female, from a small quantity of sperm when it is poured out. Surat An-Najm, verses 45 and 46. Then we placed man as a small quantity of sperm in a safe lodging, firmly established. Surat Al-Mu'minun, verse 13. Once fertilized, the egg moves to the womb, where it throws out villocytes, using them to cling to the wall of the uterus and to draw nourishment. Read, "In the name of your Lord who fashioned man from something which clings." Surat Al-Alaq, verses 1 and 2. We fashioned the thing which clings into a chewed lump of flesh, and we fashioned the chewed lump of flesh into bones, and we clothed the bones with intact flesh. Surat Al-Mu'minun, verse 14. As the embryo grows, it passes through stages where many of its parts are out of proportion. We fashioned you into something which clings, into a lump of flesh in proportion and out of proportion. Surat Al-Hajj, verse 5. God appointed for you the sense of hearing, sight, and all the internal organs. Surat Al-Sajdah, verse 9. Today, we are born into an age of great scientific accomplishment. We've learnt about many of nature's infinitely complex mechanisms. When we think about the remarkable organization presiding over the birth and maintenance of life, it becomes less and less possible to consider it as the result of chance. As scientists delve deeper into cellular and subatomic worlds and outwards into mysteries of the universe, they reach new and baffling frontiers of knowledge. The classical mechanistic view of life ceases to work, and scientists are confronted with questions that have traditionally been seen as belonging to the realm of spiritual and religious belief. It is certain that science, being a relative form of knowledge, will never be able to answer these questions. O assembly of jinns and men, if you can penetrate regions of the heavens and the earth, then penetrate them. You will never penetrate them, save with a power. Surat Ar-Rahman, verse 33. The realization that life can only be truly understood in terms of its interrelatedness and interdependence is the starting point of all religious and spiritual knowledge. The Quranic revelation is the most recent in a long tradition of revealed wisdom. It presents an overview within which all other ways of seeking knowledge, including science, can be guided towards a fuller, more complete understanding. The world is already seeing and suffering from the consequences of the lack of this unified vision.